Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the SecurityMetrics podcast. I'm Jen Stone. I'm one of the principal security analysts here at SecurityMetrics. And this is the first episode of season 4, which is, wow. I'm so excited about being able to do this for another year with you. So if you've been part of the group that's been following along for a while, thank you so much for coming back. I'm always excited to hear from you. Appreciate your messages and suggestions. And so it's always great to have that kind of interaction with people. If you're new to SecurityMetrics podcast, let me give you a rundown of what it is that we do. Cybersecurity is broad and it is deep. And then you add compliance on top of that, and then there's so much more information there. A lot of people have all of this on their plate, and it can be super overwhelming. Some listeners only have one very specific thing on their plate. This piece of compliance for this specific type of standard, or maybe you're in IT and you have to secure things in a certain way. But for a lot of us, we have to kind of know a lot about a lot, which is a lot to ask. So this podcast is kind of focused on that. Everybody. We talk to everybody in the cybersecurity and compliance space. So if there is an interest, if there's a need, I'll bring people in to talk to who have specific expertise either on a tool or a specific type of compliance or a standard, so that we can all together kind of learn something. Some of the episodes will not be for you because they don't really apply to you. Some of them will be 100% for you. So I hope whoever you are, that you're able to follow along and enjoy the conversations that we have. So with that said, very excited about this first episode. I have someone coming back who I wanted to have back at the end of season 3, but things happened. I had like this flat tire and there was snow and I don't know. So, but she's agreed to come back and talk to me today. Donna Grindle. She's with Kardon and the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, knows all about privacy, security, specifically starting with HIPAA. So I would like to welcome now Donna Grindle. Donna, so excited to have you be back on the show. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, I get excited to come chat with you anytime, Jen, whether we're recording it or not.
Well, exactly. So a lot of people who follow along SecurityMetrics podcast, they know you because you've been on before. I've talked about your podcast before, but for people who are kind of new to the SecurityMetrics podcast, I just think we should let them know. So Donna is one of the 2 co-hosts for the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. And if you are in the HIPAA space, you need to follow them. I've listened to every single episode that you've put out, and a couple of them more than once, because there is so much to HIPAA. Not just am I doing IT security right in the healthcare space, but what does the law say and where are the gotchas? And you guys always talk. David Sims is your co-host, and the 2 of you talk about all of the gotchas in ways that it's super entertaining, actually.
Yeah, because usually one of us has had to participate and somebody gotchas.
Yeah, exactly. How long have you been doing that, the Help Me with HIPAA podcast now?
Oh, wow. This year is 7 years. We started in 2016. So the first one came out May 2016. I can't do the math. But
So if people, are looking for information on how do I know what to do, there is so much free content right there.
We always say it's free. And if you're unhappy with it, triple your money back.
Well, I've always been super happy with it. So I
thank
hope that
thank you.
people
I appreciate it.
will go listen. But tell me a little bit more, and listeners, a little bit more about who you are and what you do, the organization you're part of, so that people kind of have a background on who you are.
I am the founder and CEO of Kardon.
Yeah.
I'm the Don of Kardon. But we do nothing but help people build and manage privacy and security programs.
Yeah.
And obviously the HIPAA space is where I started in healthcare, writing electronic claim software decades into the previous century. we're just going to go with that.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. So, and there, I have a nice lean and mean team, but we develop systems and we're here. We get your program built, and then we're here to deal with all of the, holy crap, what does that mean? Or did anybody know this was happening? Or this did happen. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
And we have tons of services, everything from our ongoing Kardon Club membership with Murphy the hippopotamus as our mascot. and we do a lot of training and consulting, everything from being your breach coach to help you figure out all the pieces and parts, just to doing workforce training. So we hit all of the pieces and parts. Crossover with you guys just a touch.
Little bit,
but ours is more of that deep dive, let me hold your hand.
I will not do the deep dive, let me hold your hand. That just makes me, honestly, I don't know if it's an ADHD thing or if it's just a personal preference, but I find that I am much better at, I'll go in and I'll assess exactly where you're at right now. I'll even write up in my report recommendations of what people can do to close those gaps. But then people who want that deep dive, the deep dive training, the deep dive development of that program, I always point them in your direction. So even though there's a little overlap, I think that it's more a complementary thing than in any way a conflict thing. So
yeah, my idea was we were just going to do assessments, and then people cried when we left. And
I've had that. Yeah, I feel really bad when that happens.
See, but I'm not lying. People think I'm just joking, but that is absolutely true because you're telling them all these things that need to be done, and we help them actually do it.
Yeah,
and figure it out. And no, I am not going to take over as your compliance officer, but I will be the advisor to your compliance program.
And so that's a really important niche of our industry that is needs to be filled. A lot of people don't know where to go for that, and so it's really great having Kardon be there for people like that. So as part of your interest, and like you said, it's not just HIPAA anymore with you. It is privacy and security, which is a logical branch off of HIPAA because HIPAA is a privacy-based regulation, right? So if you understand the concept of privacy and how security and privacy work together, then really you can apply it in any case where privacy and security are required. So it totally makes sense.
Yeah, we're geared for a small or medium enterprise, and so we have some that are non-healthcare clients that we built a NIST cybersecurity framework-based program.
Right.
So that they could address the requirements from their clients who are big businesses who were saying, I'm not letting you touch my data until you prove you're doing some of this.
Right. And that's a lot of times where some of the smaller and medium-sized businesses start down the path of getting a formal program in place. Somebody else is telling them, business is not going to happen without that. And it's becoming more and more important. Or people will get hit by a ransomware or some kind of a breach, and then they realize, oh, now I know why it's important. But we don't want people to wait that long. We want people to get in shape before then so that they don't have to worry about those potential issues. So.
Yeah, we always say that, we get clients who have had a data breach and they're dealing with it, but we would prefer to meet you before then.
Right. It's better to not be in crisis on first meeting.
But that's our big thing, and you're going to be part of our next big training event. We're really excited to have you there.
Oh, yeah, this is actually, we should mention that. So I am super stoked about it. We should, not just mention it, we should actually talk about it in more detail because people who have stuck with us this long through this episode are probably wondering, well, what kind of training is out there? And we have this. You've done a HIPAA bootcamp for a lot of years, but the one now you've said, okay, let's get serious, make it big, make it deep dive, make it important. Tell me about the PriSec Bootcamp.
Yeah, I should tell you what I'm going to have you do.
Oh, no.
Because it's just a roll of the dice, right? So our HIPAA boot camps were becoming so popular that we had to figure out how to supersize or scale them.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do when you're got, one or two people trying to teach everything to a large room full of people.
Sure.
And these aren't conferences.
Nope.
These aren't come to an exciting place and run around half the day.
Yeah.
These are sit down, your eyes will be glazed over every day, but boy, are you going to learn stuff.
Yeah. You'll get to a point where there's so much information coming in that it'll be hard to retain it all. And I know that you occasionally have people that come back repeatedly.
Oh, we have several people that have been to several of them.
Yeah.
And the big thing though is we understand that we're turning a fire hose of information on you. We know that. We'll throw the fire hose up on the screen, name it and claim it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But we make a point of stopping after a session and saying, okay, make a few notes about this session.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you do it. What is your big takeaway? What is the thing that you need to remember to deal with when you return? And then at the end of the 3.5 day event, we sit down and say, have you made a plan?
Right.
We don't just say, hey, we're done, bye. No, the end of it is meet with your instructors, build your plan. We give you the forms and everything. Mm-hmm. And let's come up with what you're going to do in the next quarter, the next quarter, the next quarter that you learned.
And I think this targeted interactivity makes it so much. So you and I have both been to a lot of trainings, and some dude is up there just talking at you and won't even take questions. And at the end of it, you just think, well, I could have just watched that on YouTube. Right.
Yeah.
But this is not that. This is much more interactive. It's not just for HIPAA people. It's for anybody in privacy who have privacy and security or privacy or security on their plate. As a matter of fact, can you just off the top of your head tell me the types of roles that come to this training?
Oh, yeah. We have attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
We have tons of different technical folks. We've had anybody from forensics, IT folks to owners of managed service provider companies, obviously practice administrators, compliance officers. We have some groups that send everybody on their compliance team at one time or another. And what it does is it gives you such a big overview, but we want all those different people. We want the technical people at the same table with the non-technical people, because everybody's on the cybersecurity team now. If we don't learn to talk to each other and understand the needs of the other side.
Right. That's a struggle because we don't often understand each other's language. We can use the same words, but we might be using them in a slightly different way on the business side as opposed to the IT side, and even in compliance, we might use words that are slightly different from the cybersecurity efforts. And so understanding each other's language, I think, is a really big step towards having a comprehensive program in any organization.
And we do a lot of those kind of exercises, and we try to include things that are humorous, and not. I actually had somebody that came one time and said she was on her way to the boot camp, and that at that point we were doing 3 days, and she's talking to a friend. She tells me the whole story, talking to a friend and saying, "I have no idea how you could talk about HIPAA for 3 days." And about halfway through the first day, she throws her pen in the air and says, "Well, I've done that wrong my entire career." Oh, no. She's a hoot.
There is a lot to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, and by the third day, she was just excited about all that she had learned. And we get a lot of that. I'm exhausted, but excited.
And we're also going to have times where people can actually meet each other. Being able to network with people and have somebody where you're doing your job and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, but I met this person at the boot camp, and I think I'm just going to call them and just chat about it, right? And so,
yeah.
so these conversations with colleagues and peers, I think, is some of the real value out of it. But also the bourbons and breaches session. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's the most. I'm most juiced about that one. Now, granted, we have over 30 different sessions or so that we're doing. But the Bourbon and Breaches happy hour is how to end the first full day when you really are glazed over. And I will be pairing a bourbon tasting with a breach story.
Well, everybody who's asked me about training so far, in the last 6 months, I need to do training. I need to do HIPAA training. I need to do privacy training. What do you recommend? It's this. This is what I recommend. This is awesome. This is the way to go. So, thank you for explaining that. We should probably tell people.
Well, let's just do one quick piece though, so that you understand all the topics.
Yeah.
So the first half day, we call it the scrim day, supply chain risk management. Mm-hmm. That's all we're talking about that day.
Yeah.
The next day is you got to prove it day. And we talk about documentation and why that's so important. We start with, here's some of the questions you'll have to answer if things go wrong.
Yeah.
And move on from there. Then the next day is risky business day, where we just talk about risk management and risk analysis and risk assessments. And then the last day is Murphy's Law Day. And we're doing disaster recovery, business continuity.
Exactly.
So we try to break it down and keep you on task.
Yeah.
For each day and have a theme to make a little fun from it. So.
I like how much risk is addressed in this session, because really that's where it all starts. For anyone who is needs to meet HIPAA compliance, it really all starts with a risk assessment, and very few people know how to do a successful risk assessment. So people will definitely come away from this session knowing what is an actual risk assessment. It's not just a vulnerability scan.
No, please. No.
I get that so many times, but so it's going to be great, and I hope people join us. Where can they go to find out more about the
PriSec Bootcamp.com, PRISEC, because I don't like saying privacy and security 5,000 times.
PriSec seems sensible.
Yes, PriSecBootcamp.com, and there's a lot of information there. We're going to have we have an OCR investigator there to explain how those work.
That'll
and do
so
Q&A. Trying to get some other of my 405D HHS buddies there.
Yeah.
And we've got other partners like you that are going to be there to advise and entertain.
All right. Well, you offered me a really good segue into my next topic, which is 405D. Look at you, reading my mind.
I'm a thinker.
So a surprising number of people in the healthcare security space have not heard of 405D. So can you kind of give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, and it's one of my jobs now is to be an ambassador for 405D. So thanks for that segue. But this came from the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. And it had all of these things about trying to reevaluate cybersecurity across all these different government entities. Yeah. One industry vertical was called out, and that was healthcare.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know. Maybe because of all the data breaches.
Yeah, it's because of all the data breaches. Unfortunately, and I've put a lot of thought into this. Why is it that healthcare gets hit so much? And it's because it's one of the most complex ones to secure, just because of the nature of the business. That's, I think, one aspect. So I'm not without empathy for people who are in this space.
Oh, no. And the only thing I want to know is, are you trying?
Yeah.
I don't have empathy for those who don't try.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I will help you fix it, but you've got to start trying.
And the HHS, the OCR, you can tell they kind of feel the same way, because when we find out that someone's had a breach or an issue of some kind and OCR investigates it, settlements seem to be directly related to what kind of effort they put in to preventing the breach in the first place. So it's not just a good idea because it's good for patients, it's good for the healthcare industry, it's good for your business. It's good for if things go wrong.
Well, and, we do things, privacy and security isn't just about confidentiality.
Yeah.
It's about integrity and availability.
Right.
And if you can't trust the records, or you will never have access to the records again, patient care and patient safety is severely impacted.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I think that's
the
one
bigger
of
pick.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why it's harder to meet that, because availability, for example, a lot of people are very familiar with PCI compliance. PCI does not have an availability aspect to it. The payment brands don't care if you can't get to that card. As a matter of fact, they don't want you to get to that card number. Availability, get out of here with that, right? So, but that's a different thing than in healthcare. If you can't get to patient records, then lives are at stake. So
absolutely, and that's the driving force between what we do under the 405D group now, because its original mission, there were several sections, but it was, get a finger on the pulse of what's going on and then give us some ideas how we can improve it. But it has to be across this very complex industry, as you said. And to me, it's three things. The complexity of the industry. We've got legacy systems. We've got diagnostic equipment you do not want to mess with. No. We've got multiple EHRs talking to each other, paper flying, and God forbid you take away the facts in healthcare. It's
the one industry where people legitimately use faxes all the time, and other industries are going, those machines still exist.
So it's amazing. Do. And so you have that complexity level, and then we're data rich.
Yes.
Data rich and cybersecurity poor.
Yes. And the amount of money the bad guys can make off of healthcare information is makes it a very tantalizing target.
Well, because they know that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, literally people's lives depend on it.
Yeah.
If you're going to hold something for ransom or demand payment.
Yeah. Hey, you want your information or people die? This is a well-known way to get money out of people. And cybersecurity, the bad guys there have found the way. So, so
that's what 405D is all about.
Great.
And we published a health industry cybersecurity practices, and it has some other thing that I never remember because I just worry. HICP hiccup.
Yeah.
And the intent is there's stuff that are. It's layman terms. The main guide explains the concerns, breaks everything down into 5 threats. And if we deal with these 5 threats and vulnerabilities, if we did a good job just trying hard to do something with these, we feel like we'd be much more secure. And that's phishing, social engineering kind of stuff, because we know that's where they come in.
Yep.
Ransomware, that's where they're really causing major problems, and the industry can be just brought to its knees with that.
Right.
Lost or stolen devices, that still happens, although we're much better, but it still happens because a lot of times these old legacy systems.
Yeah.
And then insider issues, abuse of privileges, whether it's accidental or on purpose, is huge. And then the last thing is connected devices, because you've got all of these different things. The doctor goes to one of those meetings and sees those cool gadgets, which I personally love going to. Look at all those cool gadgets, and I'm running around, crazy. But then they want to put one on the network.
Yeah.
Okay, now what security does it have? How do we know how it's going to get patched? How we're going to do? And all of those things combined, if we handled those and did better at them.
Yeah.
And then we laid out 10 recommended practices with associated sub-practices, because those are more like the framework parts. And those go into technical guide.
Yeah.
Regular people talk in the main one, and then technical guides for small entities, medium entities, and large entities. And then we've now started adding all this supplemental information, additional training videos. There's posters to explain the 5 threats. And I mean, just a litany of information that's already out there. And I can tell you, hopefully by the time this thing is published, there's going to be a bunch more out there, and you're going to see a lot of discussions about what we've just released.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be really, and because so many, especially small and medium, but even big organizations struggle with this too. Where do we start? Right? That's the question. Where do we start? And in the healthcare industry, the answer is the things that 405D is putting together, the HIPAA guidance, I think, is really going to give a lift to the industry.
Well, and it's part of recognized security practices. It's actually mentioned in the new recognized security practices law between NIST cybersecurity framework and the 405D program HIPAA. If you can prove you're doing those things for the previous 12 months, OCR is obligated to take that into consideration, which I say they're doing that anyway. Yeah. But now it gives you the very specific guidance. Now, can you prove it?
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of people don't know about the new law that talks about the recognized security practices. Can you give us a high level kind of brief on that?
Well, that was it. That's it. It's not.
That's the whole thing.
There's not a lot to it, really. It just simply says that if you can prove that you have been following these recognized security practices, and it specifically mentions the NIST cybersecurity framework, the 405D promulgated, the legal terms, the stuff coming out of 405D.
Sure.
And then there's other if it is a regulatory requirement for something else.
Oh, yeah. So,
so it has to be a regulatory requirement.
Right. So. And so what I liked about that is in your explanation, if you can demonstrate some good faith things, which is really what we keep coming back to. And I like that. I like that we have a law that talks about, hey, just get started, do something, because a lot of the past laws have felt so overwhelming to some groups that they're like, well, we're just going to get breached.
Insurance will pay for it, but that's going away too.
Yeah, it is not good to kind of be like, not sure where to start.
Yeah.
So 405D really helps kind of give people a leg up on that. And so I hope if people are in this space and haven't heard of it, it's a great resource to go look up.
You go to 405d.hhs.gov.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, look, if we've said 405D 100 times, hopefully, and then it's part of hhs.gov, you're good to go.
At some point, people will go, that 405D thing, I'll bet it's part of hhs.gov. So
yeah, we all wanted to have like a much better name, but we're now like a,
that's what it is.
401k, a 50. We're just part of that now, so just go with it.
Yeah. So, okay, great. So basically, the last kind of piece of information I wanted to cover with you is this. If you could give somebody who didn't know where to start with it, maybe they're a small practice, maybe they're a new practice, and they say, I don't know where to start. Where would you guide them?
So we take that approach, and it really is going to be very dependent on the type of entity, right? Because we deal with startup business associates as startup practices that come to us, and we've had enough of those cases, or we have practices that have been around a while that really need to start over.
Yeah.
Let's just go with that. It'll be easier to start over than to rebuild what you have. Let's just start over.
Yeah.
And it's just like anything else, the whole, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time. And then always remember the other piece of that is that perfect is the enemy of done.
Yes.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be perfect. What you have to do is get started. So if you came in, we would say, look, do a security risk analysis. Just very basic. I'm not going to ask you if you're doing any of the things because we know you're not.
Yes.
I'm not going to ask you the assessment part that looks at what protections you have in place. Let's just start with the ones you need to have.
Yes.
And we start building your policies and procedures for all, privacy, breach notification, and of course security. We just start building them after we do that risk assessment or risk analysis, really.
Because the risk, and we kind of use those words interchangeably because
we have a way to
HIPAA uses those words interchangeably in an odd way, and so I've kind of thrown my hands in the air. So anybody who's a purist out there, I know.
We teach the difference at PriSec Bootcamp.
Oh, okay.
We'll teach you we'll teach you a lot of things about how to remember the different parts of risk management.
Yeah.
Because really and truly, privacy and security, like you said, it's all about business risk management.
Yep.
That's it.
That's exactly.
Everything you're doing is business risk management.
If you haven't started with the risk piece, well, first of all, you don't know what your scope is. You don't know how the threats can potentially impact your scope. You don't know how to assemble your policies and procedures. How do you know what to follow if you don't even know what it is what it applies to? And then procedures. Well, how do you do things in these? In the environment that you've set out, that is your scope that we're looking at. So there is a step-by-step way of looking at things that helps people build their understanding instead of grabbing policies and procedures off of the internet, filling them out, that has nothing to do with how their business or practice actually does things. So really, it's more about ways to think about how risk exists in your specific environment and what you're going to do to minimize it. That's all HIPAA is.
Yeah, that's really what it is, and like David Sims, the
famous
entertaining co-host, but he always says, I do risk analysis every day when I decide to tell my wife something that I know she's not going to like.
And yet he's still in trouble with her all the time.
Yes, he is.
So maybe he's not very good at implementing the risk analysis results. No, sorry, David.
He just figures out how to mitigate the risk that he knows he faces.
Okay. Do all of us, we do all, though, analyze risk in every moment of every day.
And that's what we try to get everybody to see. Instead of this overwhelming, scary thing, security risk analysis, think of it, you do it every day, and then we break it down to, you also do mini risk analysis in your business every day. So we want to change the mindset.
Yeah.
And that is everything to do with, don't look at it the way you've always looked at it. Try a few different approaches and then tie back in to what you already know, because we've got to find new ways to communicate the importance of privacy and security in every business.
Exactly. I love that you said communicate, because I was just going to say, if you can present what the risk is to the decision makers in the business in a way that they can take that information in, then they can assess how much does this risk need to have priority against this risk, and the finances that we have internally in the organization and the people and how do we address it from a business perspective. Just because you know exactly what those risks are from maybe a cybersecurity or a process perspective doesn't mean that the business understands them sufficiently to put money and people towards mitigating them, right? So
exactly, and you don't just start doing whatever IT tells you to do. Please do not.
Yeah, no, that's such a bad idea.
They need to participate in that risk analysis.
Yes.
I got $100 to spend across all of these things. Now I'm going to break it down to where am I going to spend that?
Yeah.
And it can't always be the latest and greatest toy that'll make things easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a gentleman he was a sysadmin recently that I spoke to who was pretty worked up because he had participated in some risk analysis activities, and there was something that he really wanted taken care of that the business wasn't putting money towards. And I said, look, you need to find a way to put it in their language. So if they really understood where you're coming from on this, and if you really are correct that it is the risk that you think it is, you need to find a way to communicate that. And I love this PriSec Bootcamp is coming up, because all of the people sitting at the table have different languages, different meanings for the words that they're using. They have different perspectives on from IT and the law and business. So just having those conversations with people who have different perspectives is going to kind of help tune your brain into, oh, I hadn't thought of looking at it in this way before, or here's the language they used. I can use that with the people back home.
Right. You're not telling your children what to do. You're doing marketing.
Yeah.
Everything in privacy and security program is, those of us running it, we're doing the work, but to get others involved, it's all in marketing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we have little catchphrases we use and little things that we do to try and bring that into the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my one big thing about that communicating thing and the overall risk management under security is I always use Donna's 3 rules of security. 3 rules. This is pretty easy. Number 1, security is not convenient.
Yep.
Just accept it.
Yep.
If it were, you wouldn't run around looking for your car keys.
Right.
I mean, that alone, where do we put the keys?
Yeah.
If you don't have a key ball or a key hook, and then you do it because security is not convenient.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always going to be inconvenient.
Right.
However, rule number 2 is security is not optional.
Right.
I can't just leave the keys in the car if I actually want to secure the vehicle.
Right.
I can't just say, oh, well, I don't want to look for it because it's inconvenient, so I'll just leave them in the car.
Yeah.
You're either going to be locked out or the car's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Well, unless you live out in the boonies where I grew up.
Right.
I got in trouble for not leaving the keys.
But that comes back to risk, and I want to hear number 3 in a second, but that comes down to a risk analysis, right? So just because some massive organization has to secure things in certain ways, and you too want to be secure, but you're a tiny company with a different data flow, you might not use what they're using because they might live in the middle of Manhattan and you might live in Podunk, South Dakota, which I would love to move there, actually. So, South Dakota is one of my favorite places, so I didn't mean that in any way insulting, but we're talking teeny tiny town in the middle of nowhere as opposed to Manhattan, right? So doing that risk analysis of what's happening in your situation, that affects all of these decisions. So I love that. Number 1, it's not convenient. Number 2, certainly not optional. But
yes. And IT folks are really good at those 2 parts of the rules. And everybody else tends to not accept them that much.
Yeah.
But the 3rd one is exactly the opposite. Because the 3rd one says security can't prevent me from doing my job and caring for patients.
Yes. That's where you get the trickiness. How do we balance all of these things? Yeah.
So you all 3 must be met.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody sit down. IT folks, don't just say no. You're no longer the Department of No. You can't be that anymore.
Yeah.
You have to say, okay, you want to communicate instantly with each other, but I can't let you do that with a standard SMS on your phone because it's not secure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to get you to agree to use this app. No, it's not convenient, but it's also not optional.
Yeah.
But it will let you do your job.
C satisfies all those 3. And look, I've heard you say this multiple times on your podcast and still needed to hear it again, which is why I keep telling people, keep going back for training, keep going back for learning.
Right.
Listen to those podcasts again and come to the boot camp.
Yeah, I'm the one that walks around with it in my head all the time. Everybody else gets to live normal lives.
Yeah, that's a weird way to live, Donna, but I approve.
There's so much more weird about me, though, and you know it.
I cannot wait for this in-person thing in March. I think it's going to be great. And unless people, in case people missed it, I'm going to be one of the people there helping and speaking. And so if you want to come and meet me. We'll go hang out. We'll have some bourbon. It'll be great.
Oh, yeah, bring it.
All right.
Oh, and if you're not a bourbon drinker, don't worry. We got you.
Yeah, we have sparkling waters of all kinds. So
yes, we do. And we have all kinds of options. We are not one to leave anyone out that wants to participate in a privacy and security discussion.
Exactly. So, hey, thanks again for coming and joining me. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Come to the boot camp.
Yeah.
If you can't come to the boot camp, definitely listen to the podcast.
Definitely.
If you're an MSP, we have HIPAA for MSPs. Go check that out. Our mission is to help IT, outsource IT companies, MSPs, understand their obligations, but also their clients' obligations better to build something that, again, everybody's on the cybersecurity team.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to work together, and we've got to do more of that.
So
it's got
much
to
information
permeate
there.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So HIPAA for MSPs, that's a great organization we're building. And we also, the official announcement is already out, probably by the time this comes out, that we are now partnered with the American Institute for Healthcare Compliance, the first and only HIPAA certification by the third-party certifying organization for MSPs and HIPAA.
That's
certified
massive.
HIPAA MSP.
That's excellent.
And yeah, we partner with them to help build it. We've got training that we're doing, which you could get at the boot camp. And so we've got that. We've got the Kardon Club. We've got all of these other ways. So there's free.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to go to the FTC for saying that. So we've got free, affordable, and we're there to build these things for these reasons. And we're very passionate about what we do. So don't ignore it. You know, one bite at a time, and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. And I will have you on the show again.
I love it.
All right. Thanks, Donna. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks again for joining me on this episode. Very excited about all of season 4. We have some great guests lined up. Even if they're going to talk about something that isn't specifically for you, I hope you'll join us anyway. I think that you'll find a lot of good value in the information that you learn, and maybe learn a little something about, you know, somebody that you work with understands, so you can kind of gain that understanding. If you've found value today in what you've heard, please share this. Share this with your colleagues. Share this with somebody who is in your field or in a field that's similar to yours. Would love to have more people listening, and spread this word to as many people as we can reach. Thanks. Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of SecurityMetrics podcast, click on the box on the left. If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. See you on the slopes.